Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris and today I want to talk about this beautiful vintage Japanese guitar from the 1970s. It is known to some of you, maybe the German viewers specifically, as the infamous Hertiecaster. Now, is that an official name for this guitar? No, it's actually not. It was nicknamed by some, I don't know, funny people in the past because it was predominantly sold in the 1970s at a German mall shop, basically also a mail order shop called Hertie. Now Hertie has long been out of business. I think they are now out of business now for 30 years or something like that. And I know from restoring literally dozens of these guitars that they were also sold in serious musical instruments shops because of the little stickers that these shops sometimes put on the back of these guitars. I know that they were not only sold at Hertie, but I got it from a former employee from Hertie that they were indeed sold at Hertie in the 1970s. So this is the most common model that was imported to Germany, and a lot of elderly German gentlemen now probably made their first steps as a guitarist on a guitar like this. Now, the question is, who made these guitars? I mean, there's no badge on it. As you can see, there's no signs or anything on these guitars. So who made them? For many years, I believe these guitars have been made by Teisco. Teisco was a Japanese company in the 1960s that was making very funky, very unique designs, and it got famous because some players in the past, like Dan Auerbach and Jack White, picked up Teisco guitars and played them. And yes, Teisco indeed made a guitar similar to this in the 1960s, which had 4 single coil pickups and a kind of Strat-like shape. I think it was called the model ET440, and that's, I think, why many people, including myself, believed over the years that this was made by Teisco. And obviously it gets repeated and repeated on the internet endlessly. Now, after years of researching these guitars and restoring them and comparing the features of these guitars with features from other guitars of the time, and then also reading the book The History of Japanese Electrical Guitars by Frank Myers, a book that I can really recommend, I came to the conclusion that this cannot have been made by Teisco. The first reason I know from original owners of these guitars who got them in 1972, 1973 as Christmas presents or bought them in the shop. They got it only in the early 70s. Now at that time, Teisco was not around anymore, you know. Teisco went into insolvency in 1967 and was subsequently bought by Kawai. And Kawai continued with whatever remained of Teisco to produce cheap entry-level guitars until the late 1960s, maybe 1969, 1970. There was another company called Teisco Gengaki, which was a subcontractor of Teisco, but these guys also only were around until 1970, and then they stopped making guitars. So who possibly could have been the maker of this guitar? I came to the conclusion that it was today rather obscure Japanese company called Sakai Moko, and Sakai Moko actually was responsible for a lot of cheap entry-level guitars that were imported to Europe and to North America, but mainly to Europe actually. They made a lot of guitars, most famously the Top 20 model, which Robert Smith of The Cure played in the early days of The Cure, and he loved the pickup of that Top 20 model so much that he took it out and put it into one of his Fender guitars later, and it's the exact same pickup as you can find on this guitar. So if you're after that early The Cure, trashy, single coil, clean sound, very low output, very microphonic, that's exactly the kind of pickups that you should be looking for. Now, this guitar specifically is very distinctive because it has the German carve, which is kind of this carve in the in the body. I don't know why they did that. It was fashionable for some guitars at the time, namely Rickenbacker and some others. So this was kind of the top of the line model, which they offered in German stores. So it has 4 single coils, which is kind of massive and unique, you know. I mean, which guitar has 4 single coils? And you can switch them individually with these switches here. You have a rhythm circuit with the switch. You have 2 pots, one master volume, one master tone pot, and you have a tremolo, of which the arm is missing. That's very common with these guitars. So you have to find a replacement if you want to use that. And so there were different variations of this guitar. The earliest ones had a solid wood body. The later ones had a plywood body, which is typical for Sakai guitars of the 70s. And there's only one other Japanese guitar that I know that did plywood body guitars, and that is Chushingaki. Guess that this one also has a plywood body. I didn't look inside yet. But I would be very surprised if this had a solid wood body, because it also has only 2 pots. The earlier models had 3 pots, and the 2 pots is also a feature of the later models. But it already has a solid maple neck, as you can see here. The earlier models had a multi-striped laminated maple neck, which the Japanese copied from German makers, namely Hopf and Primus. And the later models of this didn't have that. So it's kind of an intermediate model, and I think also because it still has rounded tuner pegs. And in the late period of the manufacturing of this guitar, the tuner pegs were already Schaller type tuner pegs, very distinctive. And Schaller introduced these, I think, around 1974, 1975, and then the Japanese very quickly copied that tuner peg design. So this guitar still has the rounded tuner pegs, the old school tuner pegs. So I think it's previous to 1974 or something like that. So my guess is we are looking at a 1972, 1973 Sakai Moko 4 pickup, top of the line guitar, how it was sold in German musical instrument stores and also at Hertie, as we know. And yeah, so in the next part of the video, I'm gonna show you how I make this enjoyable and playable again, because that's what I've been doing with these guitars for 15 years now, so I know a thing or two about what you have to do to make them playable again. And if you enjoy the video, I would be very happy if you subscribe to my channel and also hit the like button, because I want to continue making videos like this. This is the first one, so bear with me a little bit. And yeah, so every subscriber helps, every like helps, and hope you enjoy the video, and yeah, have fun with watching how I restore this. Okay guys, here we are with the guitar on the workbench, and the first thing I do in a restoration is that I actually examine the guitar and its condition, so that I have like a first look and know what is coming up and what I will have to do to restore it and make it enjoyable again. So the first thing I check is how the string action is like right now, and it's a bit hard to film that. Now, as you can see, the bridge is pretty much maxed out. So that means there is little to no leg room for the string action to go. We can remedy that by using a shim on the bridge. We need to take it off anyway, and then we're probably gonna put a shim underneath it. Okay, so the next thing that I'm gonna check is whether the electrics of the guitar work. Let's see. That sounds good. Volume potty works. Not sure about the tone pot. Okay, so by and large, the electrics of the guitar seem to work, so that's good. But still, I want to check it. I want to open up the guitar and want to check if anything's wrong in there. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna loosen the strings. As you can see, the strings are really old, and the way somebody had strung up the guitar is really not, you know, at all right and professional. So any guitar that I restore gets a complete fresh set of strings, and first thing I'm gonna do is take these off. I have taken off the strings. As you can see, the fretboard is really dried out and the frets are not shiny at all anymore. It seems to be a little bit dirty, not too bad, actually that's good. So definitely the fretboard is one of the things that we're gonna address. I'm going to completely disassemble the guitar, and in order not to lose the parts, I'm using something like a tray, something like this, so that I can actually store all the parts. I'm doing the first, couple of cleanups while everything is assembled, because then I don't have to hold it while cleaning it up. Oh. Okay, so here we have a special one, which we need to be careful. I'm heating up the soldering iron. Oh, Jesus. So normally I would use the power screwdriver, the power tool for that part of the work, but unfortunately the battery is empty right now, which is, yeah, bad luck. So I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way with the screwdriver. So these screws come out nicely. Okay, so I heated up the soldering iron, and I'm gonna hold the soldering iron into the center of the screw because the screw won't come out. The soldering iron many times helps in loosening whatever it is that actually holds the screw and doesn't allow me to just dial it out. And in the meantime, while I'm heating this up, I can already go on removing other screws here on the guitar. Okay, let's see if that was already enough and sufficient. Yes. Okay, so the old trick with the soldering iron and heating up the screw already helped, and it will come out now nicely. Okay, so we unscrewed the pickguard, and now we can carefully take it off. Okay, here we go. This is inside, and yeah, let's have a look. Okay, so here you see the electrics of the guitar. Here you see the switches, and you can also see the rhythm circuit switch here, and you can see these parts. These parts are surely not original, and the input jack also is not original, I can tell you that. So the question is whether these parts with their... Somebody cut off actually the shafts of the pots. So the question will be whether these will hold the replacement pot knobs that I intend to put on this guitar. That's the big question. So maybe I will have to change them. The rest looks very clean. These black switches are not original. Originally these guitars always had white switches, and but we're gonna leave them because changing them back to white ones is just very, very tedious, and yeah, we're not gonna do that. Now the other thing which I want to show you in this perspective is that indeed the guitar, as you can see here, has a plywood body. These layers that you can see there are clearly plywood. Yeah, so I was right. This is a later model, later production model from the early 1970s up to the mid 1970s plywood body. Yep. And apparently somebody has cut out a corner here for whatever reason. Probably it didn't fit the new switches well. So yeah, I don't know why they did that. I'm gonna put this away for the moment. Here you see the big pool in the body that houses these massive amounts of pickups. You can see the end of the neck, which has a truss rod adjustment wheel. So Sakai guitars always have this truss rod adjustment wheel at the end of the neck, an indicator that it is a Sakai guitar too, because other 1970s Japanese guitars usually don't have that. They have the truss rod adjustment in the traditional place. Now let's examine the neck. As you can see, frets are in okay condition. I can see some fret sanding marks. Somebody sanded the frets already, and the reason why they did that is because the lower frets already had like dents, and I don't know if it's visible on camera. Yeah, I think you can see it. Little dents. Yeah, so we're gonna do some light sanding on the frets, very light sanding, but we're gonna leave it at that. So I'm not gonna do a complete fret job, which is probably not worth the effort on the guitar, as the market value of this guitar is about 300 euros. It would be too much effort to do a complete refret. So, okay, looking good. Let's go on. Okay, so for the next step, obviously I'm gonna take off the neck from the guitar. Oh yeah. So hopefully these screws come out fast and easily, but yes they do. So whenever you are taking off the neck from an old guitar like this, be very careful, because sometimes the screws are very rusted and they might just snap if you're not careful enough. And in that case, if they're not moving immediately when you try to turn them, use the soldering iron to heat them up and loosen up the grime and dirt and rust a little bit, which makes the thing way less risky to do, actually. Okay, so I'm gonna take off the neck plate, and as you can see, the neck plate also doesn't have a made in Japan engraving, which some Japanese guitars didn't have. Most of them had a made in Japan engraving in the neck plate. Sakai guitars sometimes have too, but many times they had a little sticker which said made in Japan, and that sticker obviously was either fell off or obviously was taken off by people, because back in the day made in Japan wasn't seen as a quality thing, and so people didn't want others to know that their guitar was made in Japan, and they took it off. Okay, so we got the body. The body is taken off. I'm gonna store this somewhere else now, and then I'm gonna take care of the neck. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is that I want to sand down the frets just a little bit. And the way I'm doing this, I'm using this special fret file. It's a crowning file for frets. So I really just actually want to crown the frets anew instead of doing a whole fret leveling job or something like that, because I don't want to do that and I don't think it's necessary. But I think that the frets could use some freshening up with a crowning job. And the way I do this is that I'm using this and I'm basically only doing like 10 strokes, or basically I'm counting to 10 each time I go with this over a fret. Now, some people will cringe and will say like, Chris, how can you do that? Why are you not taping off the neck and doing a real fret leveling job? Yes, that would be like the more effort, job that you can do with this. I want to keep the effort low on this guitar. I think the frets are totally fine. They don't need any leveling. They just need some freshening up of and making them smooth and again. Okay, so the second round is done with a sanding file that is actually a little bit smaller than the one that I just used. And this is to basically round off the top of the frets even more. And again, I'm just counting to 10 by using this. Okay, so much about the sanding of the frets, or at least a little bit of sanding. I know this is just a very rudimentary sanding job. I wouldn't even call it sanding. It's something like a smoothing out of any dents or any scratches that are in the frets. I think that is sufficient for now. Now, I definitely didn't want to level them down even more because they're already pretty low. Which is completely normal for these old guitars. They had small and low frets. They just have vintage frets, and I don't want to level them low because that would basically kill playability of the guitar and also be too much effort considering the value of the guitar. Next thing I'm gonna do with the frets And then I think we're done with the frets. Is I'm gonna polish them with a polishing rubber. This is a 1000 grit polishing rubber. And a lot of people use steel wool, 1000 grit steel wool. I don't like the steel wool because the little fibers of the steel wool go everywhere, and basically it's not healthy for you and your lungs and everything. So I don't like to do that. Now the thing is, with a guitar like this that has like a dark wood, rosewood or whatever this is, fretboard, I don't bother actually taping it off when I polish the frets, because even if the rubber touches the wood a little bit when I polish them, that's fine, because I'm gonna oil and smooth out the fretboard anyway, so that's fine. If this was a guitar with a lacquered fretboard, like a maple neck, vintage maple neck with a lacquered fretboard, I would do it differently, but like this, it's totally fine to not actually tape off the frets. Okay, let's do it. Okay, here we are. The frets have now been sanded, and as you can see, they are quite shiny again, nicely polished, and I think with that the frets and the fretboard is in an enjoyable state again. So so I'm quite happy with this job. For me, this is sufficient. Obviously you can do so much more when you take care of a vintage fretboard, but that's fine. Okay, so next step is cleaning the fretboard, because it's a little bit dirty and a little bit like dusty and stuff like that. It's not too bad, but I've seen worse actually than this, but still there's dirt on it and I want to get rid of this. I'm using a scraping tool. This is actually for protection of the frets, if you want to protect the frets each time you polish them. I'm using this as a scraping tool. It doesn't have too sharp edges, so it's not going to scratch the fretboard in any way, and it has actually rounded edges because it's there to protect the fretboard. And I'm gonna show you how I do this. So I'm using guitar polish. I've run out of it, so I'm using whatever I have left of it now and just put it on. That's okay, it's a bit messy now. Just put it on there. And obviously there's a million ways in how you can do this. I'm doing it like this, and then I'm scraping off any dirt that is on the fretboard. And as I see that there is actually very little dirt on this one, so it's fine. Some people might argue like, Chris, this is gonna dry out the fretboard, and I'd say yeah, but only on the surface, you know. On the surface it's basically attacking whatever dirt is on the surface of the guitar, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Basically get rid of all the dirt. Usually there's more dirt on the lower frets than on the upper frets. Let me check if you can see this. There's a little bit of dirt on the scraper. Okay, now I'm gonna wipe all of this off. Okay. Okay, and while I'm at it, I can also clean the headstock. No, sorry about the mess. with the guitar polish, but as I said, I've run out of it, and I don't have the new one. I'm also using this hand cleaner, which has a little bit of alcohol, for, you know, some like lacquer surfaces. This is totally fine. You don't need the expensive guitar polish, so this makes it nice and clean again. There we go. Nice and shiny. Nice and shiny. That's how we want it. That's how we want it. Okay. And as you can see, the fretboard is kind of drying up. You know, the... Alright. Now what we can do is we can basically reapply the tuners already to the guitar. They're pretty clean, so they don't need some special cleaning or anything. It's totally fine. But we're gonna oil them once we tightening the screws that hold the tuner shafts, because they come loose quite often and people lose them, and it makes basically the whole tuner bar in some cases become useless. Okay, let's clean the tuner pegs. Right. String retainer bar goes back on. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray some mechanical oil into the truss rod cavity there to make it smooth, so once we're gonna set the neck, that actually this whole screw is actually smooth. That's cool, that's smooth. Okay, and then the last step with the neck for now is actually to give it a good oil rub. And a neck that hasn't been actually oiled, or a fretboard that hasn't been oiled for so many years, apply maybe a little bit more than you would on a modern guitar, but it's fine. You can wipe off the excess. So I'm using this Barbera teak oil, which is a furniture oil for wooden surfaces. It's very nice, it's very friendly, it's not aggressive at all, and I've been using it for many years. You don't have to buy the very expensive like fretboard oil from Dunlop or whatever. This is totally fine. and I'm applying it like this to the neck, and then I'm rubbing it in gently with my fingers like this. Okay, nice and oiled, nice and shiny, all good again. And yeah, so much for the neck. I'm gonna put this to the side now, let the oil sink in for 10 minutes, 20 minutes maybe, and then wipe off the excess, and that should give the fretboard a very smooth and nice and oiled surface, which basically will hold for, I don't know, half a year or something like that, until you have to re-oil it again. Make sure that your fretboard is well oiled at any time. You see that the body is nice and shiny again. I didn't clean the back yet, because that's what I'm gonna do as the very last thing. Because moving the guitar around once it's been reassembled, and then basically holding it and playing it and demoing it, will basically make the back dirty again. So I'm cleaning the back once I have made all the photographs for the sale of the guitar, and then basically put it into storage until it is sold, and that's when I'm cleaning the back. So the back is still in its uncleaned condition as it came. Okay, let's talk about the pickguard and the missing parts of the pickguard. So thankfully we already established that it is all working, so we don't need to fix any of the electrics. But what bothers me a little bit are the cut off plastic shafts of these pots. Whoever put them into the guitar, these are not the original pots. So what I'm gonna do is, I have in my stash here a selection of original Sakai knobs. They look like this, and let's see if they fit these cut off plastic shafts of the pots. And yeah, it's as I thought, they don't fit on it. So what I have to do is basically I have to exchange the pots, unfortunately, to fitting ones. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna install 250K parts, because that's the right parts for single coils like that. Okay, so here we are again, and I'm just gonna remove the parts, the non-original parts which were in here, and yeah, I'm gonna swap them for more fitting ones. And I think I'm also gonna swap the capacitor on this, because it doesn't look right actually. Now if you do this and you can't quite remember where each wire went, make a picture of it before you start, or mark the wires in a different way, whatever works for you, to memorize actually what you have disassembled. There's a lot that you can do wrong herein, and I've seen a lot of these guitars basically when they came to me with a completely wrongly rewiring and a wrongly rewired guitar setup, and probably someone in the 1970s thought, okay, I want to make this better, and then they didn't actually memorize the setup well enough, and that's the reason why the guitar eventually didn't work anymore, and maybe it even led them to giving up their hobby entirely, which would be really sad, but it's happened. And yeah, so okay, so pots are unsoldered. Let's take them out. Okay, so these are the old pots, and before I put in the new ones, I clean up the area around the pots, because that's an area that is hard to clean while the pots are in it, and so while we're at it, we can just clean it. Okay, so I got these 250K replacement pots, which I'm just gonna put in, and let's see. Yeah, so we're gonna do it like this so they don't stand out too far from the fretboard, because that's not nice. That's not something we would want. Okay, here we go. Number one. Number two. All right, so we got the new parts in, and now we're gonna solder them. Maybe we need some lead for that, and I got the lead here, and we're definitely gonna reuse this construction here. Yeah, so what you can do if the lead actually so if the lead doesn't want to stick to the top of the pot, you can always sand the top of the pot just a little bit, which actually helps to make the lead stick to it better. Okay, so let's start here with this one, and we're gonna put on the ground wire like it was before on the other pot. Number one. Careful. Number two. Alright, so that's the grounding wire. That was where the hot signal comes. So we're gonna put this here. This is where the ground, this is where the tone part, the volume party will have to go like this and be connected to this and to this. All right. Now, this is for the tone part, which is only active in the lead circuit of the guitar, whereas it's not active in the rhythm circuit of the guitar. Let's do this inside here. All right. All right, and this is where the exit goes. The hot signal goes to, oh, this fell off. Okay, we're gonna rewire this, resolder this in a minute. It's better when it falls off right now than it would be if it falls off when it's already in the guitar. Definitely. Okay, let's put the exit here. Okay, that's fine. And I think it's better if we solder this right here. Okay, so I almost forgot to put in the tone capacitor. That's really, really bad, obviously, because without that, the tone part will obviously not work properly. And we certainly don't want that. So that's why we're gonna put the tone capacitor into place. Oopsie, and then we have to put it on here. Done. All right. And now to the fun part. Let's try it. Now you might wonder, how can you try it, Chris? There are no strings and it's not on the guitar. But you can try it nonetheless. You just have to plug it in and then basically do what I call the knocking test. Let's see if it works. That sounds good. Probably works. Oh yeah. So the tone part works and the volume part works too. Second pickup, third pickup, fourth pickup all works. Oh yeah. You see how the tone of the lead circuit is way more meaty and full than the tone of the rhythm circuit. This is the lead circuit sound. And now I switch to the rhythm circuit. It's a much thinned out sound. And the tone part doesn't work in the rhythm circuit for whatever reason. They didn't want to do a master tone. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy. It all works. Okay guys, so let's come to the tremolo or vibrato, as you should say, because that's really the right actually technical term for it. So as we have seen previously, the original tremolo or vibrato unit was missing its arm, which is quite common with these guitars. People just threw them away or lost them. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put on a spare one, a replacement one. This is one. It's not an original. It looks like the original, but it's not an original. I had them made for me by a metalworking shop. I had, I don't know, 100 units or something like that made for me really cheaply. And I think these are pretty sufficient in actually doing the job and, you know, replacing. The next thing I did is that I cleaned up the tremolo with Unipol. This is a very nice metal polish paste which I've been using for many years, and yeah, it works quite well in bringing metal parts back to their old shine and glory. Just wipe off the excess and clean it. That's it. Yeah, so you can't make it as new, but you know, with a vintage guitar, you also don't want it to be absolutely new. It's fine if it has some scratches and stuff like that, but as you can see, it looks quite nice again. Okay, let's assemble it. I'm using some plastic washers and a screw from a screw set which I bought on Amazon. And yeah, so let's do it. And as you can see, works very nicely, it doesn't come loose, looks okay, works okay, fine. Okay, so now it's time to basically reassemble the tremolo unit to the guitar as well. Alright, and now it's time to put the neck back on. Okay, as you can see, the oil has basically sunken into the fretboard nicely, and we're just gonna wipe off any excess from it. And yeah, come out quite nicely. Again, this is a neck that I find then enjoyable to play, you know. So yeah, quite happy with the result. Alright, so we established or determined that the neck end could use a shim once it is reassembled to the body, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. I'm using cardboard pieces like this, and we're just gonna cut out a piece of that and then put the neck back on. Okay, so this piece should already be pretty much sufficient to do the job. Get the string action up, get more pressure on the bridge, get the neck angle right, and so this is totally fine. Obviously you can go with more money and you can buy a pre-made shim on StewMag or I don't know, wherever. The right way to do it, or the ultimate right way to do it would be to make a wooden wedge shaped shim that fits exactly the neck pocket. And but for me that's too much effort for this guitar, and so I think this one is totally sufficient to do the job. Let's put it in and let's reassemble it. Neck has a good angle now, and basically we are ready to do the final assembly of the guitar and then put on the strings. One thing that I do before putting on the strings is I'm gonna lubricate the tuners with this oil so that they run smoothly once we string the guitar up. Yeah, as you can see, the guitar is ready to be strung up. The neck is attached, the bridge is attached, tremolo, everything's working, and we're ready to put on a new set of strings. I'm using these strings, Pyramid 10 gauge all nickel strings. They are actually pretty affordable. They're about €3.50 when you buy them from Thomann, and they come wrapped in paper completely. So it's a paper bag, and each individual string is also wrapped in paper. And yeah, so because I definitely don't want to produce any more plastic waste than there is already in the world. There's already too much plastic waste in the world. And they're made in Germany, so they're made in Europe effectively, and not in China, and that is somehow important these days, I think. So yeah, that's the strings that I'm using. I'm even using pyramids for myself. I'm just using 10 to 48s for myself. These are 10 to 46, and I think it's the most common gauge of strings that like most people use. Yeah, so I'm usually using a hand winder like this to string up a guitar, or a power tool sometimes, like this one. And yeah, let's do it. So once I have the string in the peg, I'm pulling it back 2 frets like this, and then I have enough like windings on the shaft for at least the treble strings and the D string. For the A string and the E string I'm using a little bit less actually, because they're thicker and they don't need as much windings around the shaft, obviously. Okay, I'm gonna use the tool. When you string a guitar, make sure that the windings around the shaft are really neat and tidy and smooth, because that will increase tuning stability, and it will also give the whole thing a cleaner look. Okay, so the next thing there is to do is to actually check the string action. Okay, so you can see, it's very hard to film that actually, but you can see that the string action is pretty decent already. And the reason is, if you look to the bridge, we have enough leg room now on the bridge to actually dial in a good string action, prevent the bridge posts from standing out too much, which would hurt your hand if you rest your hand on the bridge. Yeah, so I'm quite happy actually. We have a string action of about 1.5, 1.8 millimeters on the high E string and a little bit elevated string action on the low E string, which a lot of people who hammer away chords on a guitar like this need, because otherwise the guitar will bust. You can always dial it down, there's enough leg room to dial it down. Now the other thing that this guitar specifically has is this kind of Gretsch style roller bridge, and this is a very common bridge on Japanese guitars of the 1960s and early 1970s. Disadvantage about it is it doesn't actually allow individual intonation of the string, because for that the saddles would have to be able to move back and forth, which they don't. You can't actually set the intonation of the guitar at the bridge. You have to live with the intonation that the guitar actually gives you. What you can do is you can adjust the distance of the strings to each other, and therefore also the distance of the string to the edge of the fretboard. And this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna check that, and I see that the low E string is too close to the edge of the fretboard, so we're gonna adjust that back, realign it. The high E string is too far away from the edge of the fretboard, so we're gonna realign all of that. Okay, so this is pretty good. I think right now, I think the low E string could even be a little bit lower, high E string too. And the good thing is we have enough leg room on the bridge to allow us that. So the other thing that we're gonna check is the distance of the pickups to the strings. Right now, if you have a look here, you see that the pickups are pretty far away from the strings. And since these pickups have such a low output, in order for them to sound good, you have to dial them up pretty close to the strings, especially the bridge pickup, because the bridge pickup is very, very close to the bridge. And that means it's very bright and has very, very little sustain and body. So it needs to be very close to the strings, because otherwise the loudness of these pickups will just overwhelm it completely. These are naturally louder because the strings can actually swing more and in this area of the guitar, and this is not as loud, so that needs to be closer to the strings than that. And I'm dialing it up, as close as I can get without the strings actually slapping against the poles of the pickup. You can see that the pickups are now staggered from very high in the bridge position down to lower in the neck position, and that's to basically balance out the loudness differences of the pickups against each other. It's still kind of tricky, and the neck pickup will probably still be louder than the other pickups, but at least you can kind of balance it out a little bit with doing that. Okay, so let's check if the neck is straight. And the thing, how I do is I'm holding down the E string on the first fret, basically an F, and I'm holding it down on the last fret, and then I'll check whether the neck is straight or has a relief. I see that the neck is actually a little bit too straight, so it doesn't have enough relief. Now let's see if we can actually remedy that, because the truss rod of these old guitars only turns into one direction, so you can basically just set it straighter, but you cannot set it actively with more relief. So basically that is something that we need to do. Need to check whether we are able to actually remedy that. But first of all, I'm gonna tune the guitar to pitch and then see how the neck actually behaves after I did that. Okay, so the neck was a little bit too straight, so what I did now is to basically give it a little bit more relief at this little wheel at the end of the fretboard, very carefully actually. So if I would turn it into a clockwise direction, it would make the neck more straight. If I turn it in a counterclockwise direction, it makes the neck, gives the neck a more relief. If the truss rod axis would be at the end of the neck, it would be different, obviously, the other way around. Okay. Sounds good? Let's check whether it's actually working. It works perfectly, so basically we're done. Yay! Okay guys, here it is, all finished, all nice and shiny again, all working again pretty well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I want to make more of these videos. This is the first one, so please excuse any like inconsistencies or any like little flaws or anything that happened. It is the first time that I'm doing something like this. Yeah, so I'm gonna do a sound demo of this also after I'm finishing this video, so you can actually then listen to it, and I'm gonna link the link to the sound demo of this guitar in the description of this video. Thank you very much for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and until next time.